Good evening, everyone. Yang Yan Zhao back again after a short hiatus. Tonight, we have the master of dark fantasy, Geronimo Draws, Robert
Hello,
himself. How you
greetings,
doing?
travelers. Greetings. I'm doing
Dark
great. Happy to be
fantasy.
here. Thanks for having me.
Uh, so you are one of the few alternate people that have not had a chance to make it to this show yet. Um,
Rectified it.
so So how did you originally become published with Alterna?
Um, it was just simply submitting through the submission guidelines back in 2017, I think. It's weird saying that now, right? Back in 2017.
All these whippersnappers.
I know. Well, that was it. That was it. I submitted, and Pete he approved, and that was it. The rest is history. Here I am talking to Yang Yan Zhao.
That must have been better times compared to what Pete is talking about in submission these days. Um,
Yeah, I can imagine.
do you think that or how would you say that the indie scene has sort of changed since 2017? Because it's kind of a pivotal year in a lot of ways.
Yeah, well, aside from the whole world being different now pre-COVID, indie really got into some type of, I would say, it was jostled. It was jostled, and everyone wanted to do their crowdfunding. But now, obviously, a lot of people wanted to do it and are still doing it. So there's much more competition, right?
Hmm.
And you have to kind of make yourself known, amongst all the crazy noise in indie comics, because there's so many people making books. So you have to get out there and do more promotion than ever. So that's a big difference. That is a big difference.
Um, So, for your philosophy, how do you sort of differentiate yourself? Because that is one thing that, I do see. You got tons of people doing the Indiegogo thing. You've got Kickstarter is its own sort of beast,
Hmm.
and then you have people who are working with traditional or shall we say semi-traditional publishers. So
Right.
how do you sort of break through that noise?
Well, from what I'm learning, because I'm learning this whole new YouTube vehicle every day. YouTube is the way to break through. That's the only thing I've learned, and that's something that I see Pete doing his thing. So it's I believe that's the only way to really do it is dedicating yourself to communicating with your readers, um, literally on a channel, your channel, which is you're turning into your own network. And in my opinion, that's really the only way to break through it, as far as I can tell.
Yeah, I think a lot of people would definitely say that. Um, do you have you have your own channel, of course, which
Right.
there's a link in the description for anyone who does not know it.
Oh, thank
What
you.
what are your sort of tips and tricks when it comes to uh, like sort of getting your own channel going? How do you navigate that space? Because it's it can be intimidating to start, and that's sort of what a lot of new people who are on a first book they seem to break out in cold
Yeah.
sweats.
Yeah. I mean, I still get cold sweats though. No, no, I'm not an expert by any means, but what I've learned so far in my amateur experience so far with YouTube, it is consistency and doing it.
Mhm.
Try to make it a habit every day, if not every day, 6 days a week, right? And just just sacrificing that hour because I do draw streams a lot on my channel and occasional discussions with other creators. It's really creating this momentum and this healthy habit of cultivating your audience. and being there with a new video. In this case, like I said, draw streams. So this way they know I'm going to be there and we can have a great discussion as I draw and they can watch me draw live. But that's really, I would say that's the big thing is the consistency and making it a habit. And then slowly people will see that you're serious, because
Hmm.
people don't want to jump on board something when they're like, yeah, was this guy going to be doing this for how many weeks? And then that's it, you know?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think part of it is, people have so much entertainment time,
Uh-huh.
um, and so they like the consistency. They like to know, like, oh, Monday at this time is I'll go watch somebody draw, or I'll get to
Right.
see other creators, or
Or that.
yeah, why not?
That's how I got my first 900 blast beat.
Um, so walking it back a sec, how did you get into art? Like what got you into it? Were you trained in it? Are you self-taught?
A little bit of both. Um, I was introduced. I mean, it's one of those stories, right? It's like, oh, the moment I had a pencil in my hand. I don't know when I started drawing. I was just making drawings, and the passion just continued and continued. And from playing with toys and the idea and the concept of playing with toys, which just is a wonderful tool for enhancing one's imagination. I think kids of all out of everything, what kids need to do is play with toys again, not their iPads. Personally, I mean, playing
Yeah,
with GI Joes, Star Wars figures back in the day, it was just that simple act of playing, man. It was so crucial to really, really, like, we take it for granted, but you're literally making scenarios, you're making scenes, it's a whole world and you could do it for hours and hours, you know, and you want to get that. You want every time I'm creating, I'm trying to connect to that again, you know? So, uh that was it. And then I always loved comics as a kid, and my mother was the one who introduced me to art. So she took me to museums and she showed me
oh,
artwork of Caravaggio, at the Met, the Metropolitan Museum of
oh,
Art.
wow.
Yeah, so because she was a big lover of fine art, so of history, so we would go there occasionally as a family, and we would just look at the paintings, and it really just stuck with me.
Hmm. So Wayne says, Rob, your draw streams got me through a rough summer.
Oh,
Really look forward to that hour watching you go to work. Well, Wayne, you can
oh,
always watch the replay
thank you,
after
brother.
this show is over. You can go to Rob's channel and watch a replay.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate it, Wayne. Thank you, man. I'm happy the
Uh,
draw streams could do that for you, man. That means a lot.
so when did you say, there's always a difference between an art lover and even
Mhm.
someone who makes their own art, and then there's some sort of switch that flips,
Mm.
where people say, I should really publish a book. What was sort of that moment for you?
Oh man, that's an interesting question. Uh, I was always as a kid. It wasn't right away a book, but when I was a kid, I was always admired by. I always admired George Lucas. When I was a kid, that he was able to come up with this world and and cultivate it. It's just something that was very inspiring to me. But then when I got into comic books, because I don't have a movie budget,
Hmm.
so it's but the thing is with comic books, you don't need a budget. It's just a matter of your passion and your skills and your storytelling. And they felt like gigantic universes in these little pages, because it's not a big book. Comic books are what, 7 by 10, 7 by 11,
Hmm.
and that was it. It was really comic books as a young kid. I would even write that, when I was in like 5th grade. What do you want to be when you're older? Or six in intermediate school, 7, 8. I would say comic book artist, comic book creator. And I want to own my own comic book company one day. You know, so that was it. It's something I always wanted to do, but comics was the one that made me say, no, I want to be published. And just, I wanted my name on that cover with my story.
Uh, so is Blood Realm your first book that you've published?
Yes, I, I, I
Yeah.
I did independent publishing before,
Oh, okay.
self-publishing rather. I did that, but This was the first time I ended up getting published officially, and
Ah.
it took a while because I was still trying to figure out my voice and my style and the story that I needed to tell to get to that point, and it ended up being the dark fantasy, man.
And so, was one of your reasons to go with a publisher that you sort of wanted a little bit of sort of like help? Uh,
I know what you mean.
I don't know,
Yeah,
help on the creative side. Like, sometimes when you have a million choices, it's hard to pick
right.
one thing.
Yeah, yeah. No, yeah, that and I always wanted to be in comic shops. That was always a dream of mine when
Ah,
I was a kid. So I wanted to be on the shelves. So and obviously things have changed now, obviously. And now, in my opinion, it's even better. It's not on the shelves, it's directly in the hands of readers. And to me, that's even more special, in my opinion. So,
that brings a question I've asked some people before, and I'm just curious to see the opinions. So back in the day, I think you and I are probably similar ages. Like I used to get GI Joe and Transformers comics in the mail from Marvel Comics.
oh my,
So
yeah.
this idea of direct to the consumer, it isn't necessarily a new one. It's sort of
It's a
going
great
back.
point.
um, do you ever think that we'll get to a point where um, books in stores make sense anymore? I mean, like right now, you know, in 5 years from now, if somebody watches this, they'll probably say, "What are comic book stores?"
Yeah,
Um,
oh, yeah, yeah.
but do you
Unfortunately,
think that we'll ever sort of cycle back to where comics are like mainstream entertainment?
mainstream entertainment. Oh man. Oh, uh, that's a tough one. Oh, interesting, Blast Beat. Wow, and thank you for the kind words, everybody. Oh my God, I'm reading the comments, and that is incredible. Thank you so much. Thank you, Blast Beat, White Alakazam. I appreciate it. Um, Boy, I don't want to be bleak, but I don't. I don't know. I have to be honest with you. Technology is moving incredibly fast, too fast. And I don't know right now. It's so funny. I remember a long time ago, I watched an interview with, what's his name? I don't know how to pronounce his last name exactly. Chuck Palahniuk. I think that's it. The guy who
Uh-huh.
wrote
Uh-huh.
Fight Club, right?
Yep.
And I don't know who was interviewing him, but he was asking him, how how is it being a writer now? A novelist. At the time that I watched this interview, and he says it's a nightmare because of what we're competing with. And I never forget at that time he was saying you're competing with video games, right? This is kind of before he was talking about social media, and he was
Hmm.
saying how people's attention span is so short. They rather say, "Well, why should I invest all this time in a novel? I can go right into have a direct experience in a story in a video game." You know, now, I mean, the attention span is so short that people aren't even really playing the types of video games that he was talking about at the time. Now
Yeah,
people, you know what I mean? Now even that's too long. Now people are
that's true.
to the point now that it's mostly mobile games and Fortnite and fast. I mean, all the Call of Duty. It's so quick. It's like TikTok the game when you think about it, right?
Yeah, I like to call them toilet games. Like there's something you could play while you're on the toilet and then
Yeah,
you're done.
right, right, exactly. Um, so it's really surreal. It's surreal. So there's a lot of competition right now for that stuff. But I would Blast Beat. I was just going to get to that. Things come back around. Wow, exactly. Comic books are going to be like vinyl records. It's not the hot thing anymore, but the ones that succeed have earned it. The trendiness is gone. This is good and bad, right? I don't know if it'll be that epic period that it was maybe in the 90s, right? In the late 80s. But it's going to be special. I mean, the other week, I think I mentioned this on my stream. I had a student in one of my art classes who showed up with a cassette player. She's listening to Beatles' The White Album, which good on her. She got an immediate A. She got an immediate A for that. But I was like, what are you doing? And she was like, oh, I'm listening to a cassette player. And I said, where did you get that? I know what that is. Where did you get that? goes, "Oh, at a thrift shop." And it's just like, so the way it works is, I'm like, and I'm literally like, I know how it works. You don't have to explain to me how this works. I had this and I used it a lot. And she goes like, "Yeah, all my friends they just think it's so cool because they have to hit the buttons and have to rewind, and you could hear like the tape going." And I'm sitting there going, "Oh my God." So, you know, everything has its golden age, but it doesn't mean they're going to be gone forever. It's just there's going to be a new way to consume them in some way.
Hmm. That's true. And, I'm kind of wondering because although American comics are, the industry is swirling the toilet right now,
Yeah.
manga seems to be doing great.
Great.
And
Amazing.
kids are buying that stuff. So
Yes.
it makes me wonder, how much of that is a fad
Yes.
versus how much of it is just they have better fundamentals, and if American slash Western comics could improve their fundamentals, could they, at least get some of that market share back?
I think you're 100% right. It's See, that is another issue too. It's the fundamentals. It's the values of a society, and there's definitely something lacking in our society right now.
That's, yeah, yeah,
you know, and I was just gonna say, blast speed. This stuff for kids and for literally every age group in Japan with manga. I mean, there are
yeah,
men in their suits on their way banking jobs. Men are in their suits reading their manga on the train as they go to work. It's almost like the way pulp magazines were and pulp comics were back in the 30s, 40s.
yep.
It, it's just you got to read it and then okay, pass it on to the next person. Yeah, you want to read it, yeah, and then you go up and you digest the next one. You know what I mean? Um, the problem is that there is value. These people clearly must appreciate this. They appreciate the artistry in some sense, and they appreciate the different types of storytelling. And that's the other thing too. I mean, there's a great chance, and I'm being sarcastic, that they're not being talked down to right in their books,
Mhm.
and that's a big factor. That's a big factor.
Yeah, I mean, there really is a lot that goes into the manga thing, and I mean, I could do a week's worth of shows just on the differences in just how the whole culture around manga in Japan and most of East Asia, differs from how we view them here.
Yeah.
Um, but I do hope that, I, I mean, to me, one of the big problems with the big two, at least, is that comics never grew up with the readers.
Mm,
Um, like uh, I was talking to someone about Miles Morales the other day, and to me, the
hmm.
biggest problem with Miles Morales is that Marvel did him dirty because Peter Parker is still 20-something-year-old Spider-Man. So there's
Yeah.
nowhere to fit. Like Miles Morales should be like Terry McGinnis from Batman Beyond.
Yeah.
You know, there should be a middle-aged Peter Parker who's like teaching chemistry at community college, and
Right.
he's got a family. He can't really do the Spider-Man thing. Finds this kid, and now he mentors the kid
Hmm.
like he never had an Obi-Wan Kenobi to help him through the superhero stuff.
Sure.
Like
Sure.
that would make it much more interesting, in my opinion.
Right.
But
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
and it's sort of my hope that stories will kind of age up with the readers. Even if you look at like a book series like Harry Potter,
Mm,
if you read the first one, it's clearly aimed at like 10-year olds. But by
right.
the time you get to the end of the series, it's getting to people who are like just getting into adulthood. It's
Right.
not, the themes are darker, they're more complex.
Yeah. No, it's true. There's a couple of factors too. I think there's
Hmm.
another big one personally. First off, I think Paul's 100% right. Got to get out of the DEI phase. That's going on.
Oh
Um,
yeah, well
that's 100% right of what's going on.
yeah.
Um, and also, there is this perception of comics in today's culture, not just today's culture in our country, that they're just for kids. And that was really
Yeah.
established after the Comics Code. So that's still kind of
Hmm.
that is still like a little bit of a burden, a sin that has been passed on for generations. This idea that no, this is just for children. That's it. Meanwhile, in Europe, they've been advancing and they treat these things with désigné, right?
Hmm.
That's what they're called in France, and there's a level of respect. Their art books, their illustration books, and we just we couldn't get out of that stigma after that happened.
That's true. So do you think like since now, probably late millennials, Gen Z, they're all growing up with a lot of manga. Do you think that for them, like they'll as they age up, they will find these other mangas that are sort of aimed at older and older people until it fits?
Yeah, there's literally a manga for everything. It's unbelievable.
Yeah,
What's that one for basketball? Slam dunk. It's just, there's just every genre you can think of. There's a manga for it. And
yeah.
there's some
I
heavy
lived in
themes in some of this stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, you lived in Japan.
I lived in Tokyo for 2.5 years, and they had what are called manga kisa, which are
Hmm.
Kiseten is a coffee shop, but a manga kisa is you go in and you pay for the coffee, and they have like rows and rows of books on the shelves, and you could just borrow one and everything. So I was looking through them one day, and I found one. It was about a guy who had a superpower
Hmm.
to always. He was a chef, and his superpower was always creating the correct dish for business meetings, like to seal the deal.
That's great.
Like you could never sell a book like that in the U.S.
No, you can't. Well, that's the thing. You see how it's part of their culture, right? They're not
Hmm.
ashamed of it, right? Uh, we've been ashamed of comic books for so many decades, for so many generations. It's ridiculous, And partly it came from that comics code, right?
Hmm.
And then these companies coming in and not even acknowledging that, oh, you should go support your local comic shop after the movie ends and get more adventures. It's
Yep.
ridiculous. It's like they just want to act like they don't exist.
Yeah, that's true.
It's the
Um,
culture thing too.
Speaking of the world and building things for mature audiences, when
Mm,
you go, one of the things that really um, strikes you when you read a Blood Realm book is
mhm.
that even if you get one of the earlier books, the world feels very lived in. Like, you seem like a guy who maybe spent years like creating timelines and like a bunch of hand drawn maps and this and that.
Uh, there's
So
a map
when
in
you
there.
there is when you go about creating worlds, or
Mm,
at least the Blood Realm world, how did you? What was your starting point? Was it
mm.
characters? Was it a location?
Oh, that's a great point. The starting point was, all right, I want to tell a really cool type of story, and I want a guy with a sword fighting giant monsters. That's what I wanted.
Nice.
That was the basic. That was it. That was the base right there. That's the foundation. And from there, slowly built on it. Who's the character's name? Where does he come from? Why is he killing these creatures? So I would I would just kind of use that as my foundation and then put, these different building blocks to dress it up a little bit. And that was it. That's how it started. Guy with sword having to go out, track these monsters down and slay them. And each one was unique and different looking, horrific looking. And then eventually it was like, okay, he has to slay these beasts to bring back or heal the woman of whom he loves. Because that's a pretty timeless story that we could
Hmm.
kind of relate to in a way, right? We would want to save someone we love if it meant we had to go through hell for that person. So that was really the core of it right there. And then slowly things started to build, and it was also uh, fighting the temptation to create brand new characters and brand new stories and series and put them all into Blood Realm. Because then what happens is you're like, oh, I want to tell a story with guys with assault rifles, but it's in the future period. They're stranded on some kind of space station, and there's this monstrous beast hunting them. And I was like, we could like go into the future in Blood Realm and then put that in Blood Realm, you know? So I was like, why am my first instinct? Let me make brand new series. And this was actually Pete Sametti's recommendation to me, and
Hmm.
it was great advice. It was like, put all that in Blood Realm, and your world's gonna get. That's what I've been doing ever since.
Interesting. So, when you have these ideas, is it like you get one idea and you're like, okay, I got this idea now. I'm gonna go work through it, or like, do you have a bunch of ideas and you sort of like,
Oh
sketch out
yeah.
outlines, and then you're like, I
Oh
think
yeah.
this one's the one.
Yeah, I have a bunch of ideas, and then what happens is it's like, okay, which one can fit in this particular timeline, and which one am I most excited about to now dedicate the months or half a year to working on it. It's like what I tell my students too. Whatever you pick for your final project, because we're going to be working on it for a month, make sure you love it, because I don't want to hear 3 weeks in, when you have 1 week left before the deadline, Professor, I'm not excited about this anymore. I want to start something else brand new. It's not a good idea. So,
Do you teach college level?
yes, yes,
Okay, yeah, that sounds
yeah.
familiar. Um, uh, okay, so like, do you have like a whole folder of like sort of half-started stories that like you go back to occasionally, or is it like,
Character names,
okay, I'm
plots.
done, I need a palate cleanse, or
Yeah. Well, my palette cleanse is another series, Wirehead, which is it's kind of like a slasher type horror story.
Mhm,
So that's like my palette cleanser, where I want to go in and tell stuff that I really couldn't fit in Blood Realm. You know, where it's
mhm.
like it's a robot and he's fighting the evil corporation. So stuff like that. So that's my palette cleanser. But that's what's ironic. My palette cleanser is going to brainstorm for another another whole franchise thing.
Mm. Uh, so I have a question too about Blood Realm. So
Uh-huh.
with these books, we are mostly focused on. Let me get this map back here.
Mhm.
Oop, that's not the map. There we go. Uh, we're mostly focused on the lands of
Mordrin.
uh, Mordred. Okay. Phew. Sorry, my pronunciation is not good. Will we ever get to see other lands, other areas of the world, or it's pretty much just there?
That's the map. That's the whole world. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
It's not big enough for you, Yang Yan Zhao. I need
Uh,
more work now.
no, I'm just always curious. Like you see these stories, and it's like sometimes they'll be like, oh, there's this whole big world, but we're only focusing on this one little part, and there'd be like magic and demons and stuff. And I always
Right.
wonder, like, is that stuff happening in the rest of the world too, or is the rest of the world
Ah,
like, oh hell no, we're not going near that place?
I got you. I got you. Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, right now that's it. But there are other dimensions. Like we've seen the tether. I don't know if you got up to that
Mhm.
stuff yet. The tether is this alternate reality, not alternate reality, but it's this dimension where mages they tap into this dimension so they could get their power. Oh, thank you, White Alakazam. Appreciate it.
Um, we have Blaster Beat. Hot take: Blood
Uh,
Realm is the only modern comic I can spot from 100 yards away because every issue has the
uh,
same color scheme. Yeah,
appreciate it.
I was wondering about this too. Um, most modern comics, their covers are just weak tea, in my opinion. Like, nothing really attracts my eye. Like
Yeah.
Blood Realm, I think I got the first one. I think I got it in a store actually,
Oh, wow.
because I was like, "Oh, hey, what's that?"
Yeah.
It just immediately stuck out from the rest. Um, was this your original intention to go with like the
For the cover?
the color scheme? Yeah.
Yeah. For the cover, yes, that was my original intention. Just just pops right off the shelf. That red, there's something about red that, it just screams at you. And plus the title's blood, so you associate the red with the
Hmm.
blood, and you have this some kind of silhouette of some kind of creature or something like that from the series. So it invites you, into this dark fantasy world. You're in for something that's a little bit different than other fantasy books, you know. But it was
Hmm.
Pete's suggestion to put the red in the book. Originally, I had the book black and white because I wanted it to be like a medieval manuscript, just
Oh,
straight black and
cool.
white. Although medieval manuscripts were colored, I just imagined like it was some ancient book that was drawn in ink, and that's it.
Hmm.
But then he was like, "You see how explosive that cover is?" He goes, "You have to put that in the interiors." This was when we were in the early stages. I was like, "Oh, you think so?" He was like, "Yeah, definitely." So, and that was it. And then it slowly evolved. First, it was flat red colors, and then slowly, my love for manga, because I love manga as well. I've always loved screen tones in manga. So I wanted to put screen tones and some kind of gradients, and now it kind of just became the look of the interiors.
So about how long did it take you to really sort of find your voice and like if you ever look at like the beginning
Mm.
of a series and like later on, it's never the same. Like how long do you think it took you before you were like, yeah, that's exactly how I want it?
When as I was making the series or before the series?
Well, either.
Okay, 10 years until I finally 10-year journey till I finally got published. About 9 and a half. So roughly 10. Um, Constantly trying to figure out my voice and who I was as an artist. And then you don't realize that you're fighting who you are as an artist because you're seeing what other people are doing because of
Hmm.
this industry today and the world we live in with social media. You see that, well, I should just do this to get published because everybody else is doing that. But you're kind of suppressing who you are as you do that. And it wasn't until I realized that dark fantasy and history and mythology and religion are my greatest passions. And trying to make children's books, which is what I started out doing, was while it was
Cool.
wonderful in the beginning, you know, um, I realized that the thing I was warming up, when I was preparing to draw these children's book pages, I just was just drawing these creatures, these goat horn beasts, and all this stuff just to get the hand moving. And I never forget, this was an FIT, the Fashion Institute of Technology, where I went to school.
Oh,
So I wanted,
nice.
at that point, I was like, I need some kind of instruction. I need some guidance. And they really liked the children's book stuff, but they were like, as they started to see my sketchbook, they're like, let me see your sketchbook, because that's what they would always say. And they would like, whatever you're drawing for fun and what your hand naturally does is what you should be doing because
Hmm.
it's coming natural to you. And it was, they couldn't believe it because it was nothing but like monsters. And they literally were like, why aren't you doing this? Like, you're doing this well. And I was like, no one wants to read my monster stories and my dark fantasy. And I don't even know why I did that. I said, nobody wants to read that. They're like, this is what you need to tap into. This, because it's coming natural to you in your book. It's like the diary of an artist. Whatever that artist is doing when he has downtime, it's a
Yeah.
big deal. It's a big deal. Are you drawing designs? Are you making funny little cute characters like SpongeBob looking characters? Or are you drawing stuff that haunts your dreams? I was doing stuff that was haunting my dreams.
Um, so with your world building, so would there's people who are more literal, people who are more visual. What's sort of
Mhm.
the ratio of what influences your world building more? Is it you just sort of doodle something and then like, oh, I got to make a story for this? Or is it you sort of think of a story and then you create sketches
Mm.
to illustrate that story?
Both. It could happen either way. I could be drawing something for fun. I'd be like, ooh, that's good. There'd be sometimes where I'll be hanging out and I'll hear something and it'll sound like a name, and I was like, oh, that's a really good name. And the next thing you know, I'd be like, who is that? Straga, right? I think of that name because that's one of the characters. That's one of the Satrians. Straga. It's a cool name, Straga. What does Straga look like? You know,
Hmm.
what has he been through? What is he doing? All this stuff, starts to come out. So sometimes just the name can just spawn a whole thing.
Yeah, that was one thing that I was noticing about Blood Realm too, is you got a lot of great names, and names are one of the hardest
Oh,
things
thank you.
to come up with,
Oh yeah,
in
I agree.
especially in fantasy, because they often
Yes,
just sound ridiculous.
I
So how do you
understand.
go about creating the names? Like, do they just pop into your head, or did you
No,
sort of
they
like
don't.
workshop them?
Once in a blue moon, like Chiron Morvel was the one that
Hmm.
came the easiest. I was thinking of words and names. I had different ideas, but then one day, just I was like Morvel, I was like Chiron, and I was like Chiron
Nice.
Morvel, and I was like, that was it. That name came, and Straga. Those two names. Oh, and Olek. I wanted something. I would think I was looking at different types like Orlok and stuff like that, and then Olek.
Hmm.
So, but some of them required more. Like Targanis didn't come very quickly. Lycurgus is actually an ancient Greek name, so I wanted to. I always loved
Oh.
that name. I have a book. It's a little small book that is basically an encyclopedia or like a kind of like names and definitions
Hmm.
of different figures from Greek mythology. And I remember in that case, I just kind of went through the book and I put my hand in different spots. And one was Lycurgus, and I've used that name for everything. Even like my gamer
Oh,
tag when I was in college for like was it Xbox or something? I use Lycurgus for everything. Captain Lycurgus.
oh, okay, that's interesting. Yeah, when I was first reading the issue, I remember I saw that name, and you had said he's one of the Iron Wolves.
Hmm.
So I was like, oh, is that like lycanthropy? Is he going to turn into a wolf?
Um,
Um,
no, but you're going to see because we're actually expanding the whole origin of the Iron Wolves in upcoming these new issues here, going to a little
ah,
bit of an origin story.
so yeah, what's coming up next for Blood Realm?
So we have Blood Realm issue 13, which is currently available on alternacomics.com. And there's also the Blood Realm merchandise, which is available also on alternacomics.com/winter. You can get yourself a hoodie and a Blood Realm mat blanket. That's good. Yes, biblical
Uh,
names, 100%. You'll notice a lot of words and names sometimes in Blood Realm where they may sound like a biblical name. Because, like, uh, the Council of Zarephath. I think it was Zareph. I forgot what the exact name was. I loved reading history and different religions, and particularly Old and New Testament, obviously, for inspiration. I
mhm.
get so much inspiration from the Bible.
Oh, that's interesting. Um, yeah, so you know, uh, part of creating a world is, no one can really create a world from scratch because you're always influenced by something or another.
Yeah,
How much research do you do? Uh, like, do you
a lot.
occasionally go on like a late night, down the rabbit hole YouTube
Oh,
videos of like the ancient Phoenicians, and then you come up with a bunch of
oh,
themes,
oh,
or
forget it.
is it more
That's
like
my
off your top of your head?
that that's my favorite part. Is when I do research, I'm I'm in, and that's all I do. I have just history books and oh my goodness, whatever vibe I'm in, I will get like epic movies. It's I'm in that world. I need to be in that genre, but mainly when it comes to the research stuff, I'm all in when it comes to researching whatever theme, whether it's biblical themes, whether it's historical figures or historical periods like ancient Rome, ancient Greece. I'm I'm big into the research. Because I needed to
Mm,
feel real. I needed to. You need to make sure that your worlds feel like they exist. You
mhm.
know, and you need that because otherwise, see, here's the thing. There's a difference in what I'm trying to do. I don't want it to feel like, oh, this sounds like some guy's D&D campaign. You know what I mean? No, and there's
Everybody says that, but
yeah, but I don't want any disrespect to that. You know what I mean? There's a
mhm,
certain I want this to feel like real history. And D&D campaigns can do that. They actually can.
mhm,
But my first impression is what I want people to be like, "Wow, dude, this I feel like this really existed." That's what I'm trying for. Maybe I'm not even there yet, but that's what I want. In order for me to really get that, I need to do deep dives into actual history and philosophy too. You can't
Hmm.
really just make up these characters without knowing what makes people tick, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I've actually thought about that a long time. With the world building and sort of why people say the D&D thing, but it's more that I sort of figured out that you need a consistent rule set, like a
Yeah,
consistent thing. So if you're pulling from history, uh, it's like, oh, this thing works this way, and you have the example in your mind, even though of course you haven't repeated that exactly. But it's that consistency that makes the world seem real,
right.
as opposed to like everybody just all over the place.
Yeah, you need those rules. You need the rules. If you break your own rules, as we've seen with so many franchises lately, it's
Yeah.
you just the suspension of disbelief is gone. It's totally gone. I mean, Tolkien, in my opinion, is the master. He
Hmm.
was the one when I saw that Hobbit animated film when I was young, I was blown away. I was blown away. Lived in world. It felt like there was so much history to this place before we even set foot, in the Shire. And that's
Hmm.
the stuff
Absolutely.
felt like it's real. These places, these names, the names suggest that there were generations before. Sometimes it's not having to give all that information. It's just the
Hmm.
suggestion of it. You just have to say it once or twice, and I feel the wow. I feel the awe. That
uh,
there have been. Yeah, go ahead.
oh, no, no, go ahead, sorry.
No, that there have been reigns past.
Yeah, I was just wondering, so Tolkien is an interesting example because he started writing a lot of what became the First Age and the backstories for, things in The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings back when he was like in his late teens, early 20s.
Yeah.
And he didn't write those stories until he was older.
Mhm.
So he had, 20, 30 years of this written history. Do you think there's any way to shortcut that, or do you think it takes that long to have a
I think.
really like
Mm,
solid world history?
well, I mean, he went to a level that was is master level. I mean,
Yeah,
let's not.
yeah,
I mean, he created a whole language for these species, that he created, which I hope to do one day.
yeah.
Um,
Oh, interesting.
yeah, I would love to. A spoken language. So I don't know if you need to do as much starting out, but it takes long. It takes a long time to really, if you want to make it right. Exactly, Black Speed. Yeah, I mean, if you want to do it right, this world is growing for me every day. And I don't even know. Imagine what it's going to be in 10 years from now. Who knows? But it's just the possibilities. It's really about what you want to put into it. He put everything into it. You know,
Hmm.
he 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 was always belittled by his peers because they were like, "Why are you wasting your time writing this fantasy book?" They were like, "Why aren't you making some textbook on linguistics?" Well, he didn't want to do that.
Well,
He
he
wanted
did that too, though.
well, that's what's well. I meant yeah, because he
Um,
was already a master of it. But people were like, "Stop with all this, make more." But he put all that time into all that knowledge and all of that research that he did already, and just cultivating and nourishing this seed he had planted. And now
um,
and we have what we have.
yeah, that's an interesting point. And speaking of, getting feedback from his peers, he did have his friends in the Inklings, C.S. Lewis and some other guys
Isn't
who
that
were
crazy?
they were supportive of his work,
Yeah.
and they did give him good feedback. I'm kind of wondering, as a lot of universities get more ridiculous, um, and this might be a little tough as a professor. So I used to teach design at universities, and if anybody came to me and asked, "Should I go to college for design?" I would say no.
Right.
Just better to take courses online and save yourself like $100,000.
Yeah.
But the big thing that you don't get with those online courses is the immediate feedback of a crit. So
Yeah,
for you, when you started putting this stuff together, did you have anyone to before you started publishing with Alterna? Did you have anyone that you could show Blood Realm to and
sure.
get good feedback?
Sure. There's about like 3 people that I trust, that I know they'll be brutally honest. Not like, "Oh, it's very good. Oh, very cool." No, no, no. I want, like, tell me, this doesn't make sense. I don't know. This name stinks. I don't like that name, you know? You need those people because you have
Mhm.
this whole gigantic world in your head. It sounds so cool in your head, and when you pour it on paper, you need those people that you trust who can tell you, and then you could put all their opinions together. And if they're all telling you, especially if they're all telling you the same thing, like, dude, that opening is really like, oh, like, come on, man. It's a lot of information. Can you like cut some of that out? I don't even know what's going on. Then okay, all right. And there's no feelings hurt. Like I want that. I need to know. I need to know that stuff. You know, and it's you always have to also some people you could bounce off. Hey, this is what I'm thinking, and here's the concept, and these are some of the characters. It's cool. It's cool. And then, what do you think of this? I don't like that part as much. Really? Oh, interesting. You got to have those
Mhm.
people that you really trust.
What sort of advice would you give to like your students, when they're going to graduate? Because there comes a time when, of course,
No.
everybody breaks up and go their own way. Like
Yeah.
how, after you're out of that college setting, how do you find a group of people? Because you can find a lot of very unhelpful
Mm.
feedback on
Oh.
Twitter and Instagram. So how do you find that group where you get good feedback?
Ooh. Well, how do you get good feedback? You have to find like-minded people. I don't know how you find them on the internet. That I'm not sure. That's new to me. Maybe with YouTube and the readers. I mean,
Hmm.
I listen to my readers. Now my readers are a great barometer too for things too. They're there because now I get a little insight. I'm always paying attention to things that they really like, even if they're just commenting. Oh, this was really cool. Oh man, that character was. I really like that character. Will we see him again? These are things that I'm always like, because I want to hear that stuff. So when they tell me that stuff, that helps me. That feeds it too. That's the other main ingredient of what makes Blood Realm Blood Realm. But one thing I'll always tell my students when we graduate, because now they're out in the world and now they're going to realize the world don't give two damns about them. And
Yeah.
there's a society that's pulling them in a certain direction, whatever it may be, whatever the flavor is of that particular month, right? I tell them at the end of the day, you got to be fearless in your storytelling. You need to be
Hmm.
fearless, and that's it. If you're fearless in your storytelling, you have nothing to worry about because you're being true to yourself, and if you're telling the stories that you want to tell, and not because so and so believes you should do this and society tells you you should do that, you got to be fearless in your storytelling, and that's it. And that's some of them may do it, some of them may, depending how strong they are, emotionally, and it's not easy. It's not easy, but we need fearless creators. That's what we need. We have to go back to the old days. My biggest
Hmm.
inspiration, as much as what got me into comics were Frank Miller, that guy was big for me
Yeah.
and he felt fearless in a way for me, because he was telling his stories his way. And I always admired that, a creator who was the sole creator of his stuff. It looks like a Frank Miller. That may not be drawn like Jim Lee, not that he has to, it's to everyone's preference, but it's he's owning who he is as a writer and what he draws. And I always appreciated about that with his work. I don't know the man personally. This is what I've gathered from reading his work and just being inspired by someone who has a vision and sees it through. Uh, but also, you look at stories from the past. I look at Dante Alighieri, the guy who made Dante's Inferno, a fearless creator. You think of Virgil. You think of Homer. All these fearless creators, and I think we need to start channeling those guys because those are, if anything, you could say all of our stories are derivative of that stuff. That's how
Yeah,
far back
absolutely.
it goes. The fathers, the grand grandfathers of storytelling. So we have to channel that.
Yeah, it's interesting too because with the state of like not even talking about college education, but even like middle school and high school,
Hmm.
you don't get those kind of stories anymore. They've sort of cast
No.
aside all the classics for
Yeah.
modern whatever books. But to me, it's kind of a shame because these are like the sort of the tip of the spear. These are like people who you would want to emulate in your
Yes.
life. Um,
Yes. These
and and
characters
I'm
are
I'm
so great.
I'm fine with reinterpreting it and like taking inspiration from those. But I think when you cut out what our species, our civilizations have
Mhm.
thought was, the top of the top for thousands of years, when you get rid of that, I think it makes it kind of end up with modern comics where
Yeah,
everything is like
because it's
kind of wishy-washy and nothing really hits home with people.
right. Well, that's the thing. These things are not the bedrock. The foundation was laid thousands of years ago with
Hmm.
essential themes of storytelling, and they've been passed down for generations. And when you come in and try to reinvent the wheel with stuff that, to be perfectly honest, is really fueled by a different thing. Let's
Ideology,
be
sure, sure. Yeah,
yeah, let's be real. Um, then you don't have real storytelling. What you have is propaganda. That
exactly.
is, and that's the difference. And that is why American movies, out of everything, when oh, cinema, it's almost dessert time, so I want a little dessert: rice pudding and cinnamon. Rice
Oh,
pudding and
nice.
cinnamon. No, but when film was rising, you know, a lot of those filmmakers were fearless. You had fearless
Yep.
filmmakers, and it didn't feel like something that was coming out of the communist countries, right? Or it didn't feel
Yep.
like a World War II, German uh, propaganda film. Felt
Hmm.
like cinema because we were telling stories. That's why there's certain films that have become the bedrock, right? Like the way Homer
Oh,
and you know,
absolutely.
and now when you start doing that where it's not about the story and it's about ideology, well, now you've just become Soviet Union. Now you've become Nazi Germany. Now you become communist China in terms of the types of films they were making and why some of that stuff didn't cross over during those times because it
Yeah,
felt like, well, oh, this is a propaganda film. And it's very similar to what we have now. And nobody wants to see a propaganda film because it doesn't feel
that's
genuine.
true. It kind of makes me wonder too. Do you think people of our age um, are pretty dismissive of the modern entertainment more because of the time we came up in? Like, if in 1986, I was 10 years old. If you
Hmm.
look at marquees from 1986, there are like five classics playing at the movie theater like every week for the summer.
Yeah.
The everybody talks about 90s comics. For me, it was more 80s comics when like everything was hitting at Marvel.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
and TV shows were a little sketchier, but there were still a lot of classics. People still
Sure,
talk
sure.
about MacGyvering things.
Yeah.
Um,
It's so true.
so do you think that like for people like us Gen Xers, uh,
Uh,
we kind of look down our nose at Gen Z a little bit?
yeah.
Is it sort of unfair because we had such great things and they have crap? Like they don't know what's good?
I hate to be, and I was doing this earlier on my stream, old man pointing fist at sky, but uh it's true. It's true. You don't know you're in a golden age until it's over. And then when you realize the stuff when they're standard, that the bar let's just look at comics and video games, right? Or music. When the
Hmm.
bar is what it is now, that's the bar. No.
Yeah.
Partly why I would argue that Taylor Swift is a huge hit because
Yes.
who else is making melodic music that is also, you know, a kind of a decent role model for, I mean, I don't know her image. It's Slim Pickens. It's Slim Pickens.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of what I've been wondering about a lot of stuff. Even just, well, what is it, 23? Let's say 15 years ago, uh, through like the end of the 2000s, you still had I mean, it wasn't quite as good as the 80s and 90s, but you still had a lot of fairly decent entertainment.
Yeah,
The big two could still put out good books.
sure, sure.
There were still some decent movies being made. There's
Yeah.
some TV shows
Yes,
that were
yes.
fantastic.
I
Um, but, since then it just sort of fell off.
mhm.
Um, do you, just out of curiosity, do you see things getting back on track anytime soon, or are we going to have sort of like a lost generation with Gen Z and maybe Gen Alpha before things sort of correct themselves?
Well, when you say, level them out, what do you mean? You mean in entertainment, or do you
Yeah,
mean
just bringing back quality. Like, the 80s in a lot of ways were like a golden period, so maybe it won't be quite as good as the 80s,
right,
but it'll be, it won't be like bad like it is now.
right. Well, I'll tell you this, I don't know when, but you're gonna have to get all of these people who you put into power and in charge of this stuff, writing these stories, who really have no connection or really fueled by ideology. They're not gonna go out without a fight. Those
Yeah,
people don't wanna leave, they have
that's
a
true.
plat and it's not gonna be easy. You can't just say, "Okay, we're revamping here," you know? It's gonna be a bit of I don't know what. It's gonna get ugly personally, and I think it's gonna be like that for a bit. Until slowly you get back to people not being afraid of what some idiot
Hmm.
group says on social media about your project. I mean, these producers and these companies need to be fearless in their storytelling and just own it up. Own up to the stories you want to make. Don't worry about ticking off boxes because then you become propaganda when you start ticking off boxes.
Uh,
There's no
do you
vision.
sort of do you sort of see things, like if we look in history, since you're a history
Mhm.
guy, you'll have civilizations crumble, and then there's like a time, like sort of a dark age, and then they'll sort of reassemble themselves in a new form. Do you think sort of at least the American entertainment industry, is going to have to go through a period like that, where maybe the current big players, like if we look at comics,
Mhm.
it doesn't seem like the big two have long to last, and indie, at least, where are people spending money on American made comics? uh that's all the indies.
Yeah.
So does it do you think, like maybe 15 years from now when we do this again, we'll say like, oh, Alterna is now the third largest comic publisher, and like, do you see sort of like perhaps a resurgence coming up from like the indies movements after we sort of like clear the debris of the wrecks that have come, or do you think that like the systems that we have now will sort of be able to fix themselves, despite all the problems it's going to be to get out the problem people?
Wow, I gotta say, I don't know. That's a really good question. I don't know if it's gonna be the same anymore and how we even digest exactly, Paul, AI. I don't think things are gonna be the same. I've kind of let it go in terms of how, like, if it's gonna be like the old days. I don't think it's ever gonna be like the old days again. I think we lived in the golden age of a lot
Hmm.
of these things, and now everything's evolving very quickly. I was saying this earlier on my stream. Um, when you look at the industrialization, the whole revolution there, it changed people's lives drastically. They could
Hmm.
not mentally grasp how fast technology was moving. Their life was
Yeah.
flipped on a switch. Again, to just as I said this just earlier, so it's so interesting about suddenly having to wake up to an alarm clock, and getting on a train of this metal beast. You're all getting on a train and you're all huddling on there to get to work. Like no one had to do that thing before. But that's part of our lifestyle. And then things change even more. Things changed even more. And I don't know. I think it's going to be tough because phones aren't going anywhere. They're not leaving anytime soon, I'm saying. So how I think there's going to be a push in some kind of niche to absorb physical content, you know.
Hmm.
Will it ever be the height of what it was? I don't know. There's so much to compete with, and now you're competing with people's attention span. It's going to take it's going to be up to like parents who are going to really grow kids up on the old stuff to when they get older say, "Hey, you know, this was good, and I want to bring this stuff back." Maybe.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, and Paul's suggestion AI will make it worse. I
It's scary.
don't
It's scary.
I don't know. I think what's going to happen is so I was working in design professionally in the late 90s, and like just the proliferation of desktop publishing
Mhm.
brought out it made design available for everyone. So
Right.
one of the big money makers for designers at the time was doing corporate presentations. Whereas, once
Mm.
Microsoft released PowerPoint, that market almost entirely dried up. The only difference was at the top. If you
Mhm.
were a top designer, like if anyone's really interested, I suggest going back and looking at Steve Jobs' old his old like keynote Apple speeches. Just the way
Mm.
you use PowerPoint like stuff in a presentation is amazing
Mm.
uh, compared to most garbage. So it
Mm.
makes me wonder that even though we have AI, will AI really be able to produce um, stuff that's satisfying? Like right now, they have robots that will make burgers for McDonald's. And with minimum wage going up there, at least in California, they were starting to automate the restaurants more and more. Whereas, when I was a kid, there'd be 20 plus people working at a place. And there were some stores by highways in California where there'd be like three. And nobody likes a McDonald's when you compare it to like an actual real burger from a place that, like knows how to grind the meat and knows how to cook it correctly. So I'm kind of wondering, I'm not as fearful of AI as everyone else. I just think AI has kicked the ladder out from like the people starting, like people on like
For now.
Fiverr or well, you never know,
I
Fiverr
never
or
know.
DeviantArt. Like they were doing commissions for D&D characters or simple things like that. Like I think you're not going to be able to make money doing that anymore. But on a higher level, I think that money's still going to be there.
I don't know. It all depends how far things advance. That's the question. It's things are moving so fast with AI. It's
Hmm.
hard to really it's we can't even catch up to it. That's how fast it's moving. That's how fast technology is moving. That's what it was like after the industrialization for a lot of people. It's the same vibe.
That's true. That's true.
All right, they're talking about factories, right? But they never dreamed that now you would have automated factories.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they said the same thing back then, and now we have vehicles now that wouldn't even may not even need a driver. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
things are moving crazy fast. Still.
I don't know. I still have hope. We have like industrialized like agriculture, but yet people still want to get like homegrown organic stuff from farmers markets. So
That's
I don't
good.
know. I think there's still going to be a market for things that actual people wrote and things that actual people drew. Um, how are we going to differentiate between AI art and like maybe I find a lost Rob Geronimo edition of Blood Realm that is totally AI or something. But
Oh my goodness. Lord
but
Cyphers
I
does not approve.
but I think eventually we'll sort of figure it out. Um, you know,
Yeah, we'll
six
see.
fingers or whatever.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. At the end of the day, no matter what, people will crave art from the human soul. not the
Yeah.
AI soul, the soulless soul. you know,
Yeah.
uh, that is what people are going to crave, and it may not be to the point of what it was when we were younger, but no matter what, people are going to want that connection. It's like, look at this girl standing there in my class with a cassette player because she can feel the buttons.
Hmm.
She can hear the tape winding back. She could stop it. There's no matter what we want. We're sensory, and we want tangible things. We want
Sure.
tangible things. Having these, yeah. Oh, I have less. I don't have all these things cluttering my space. Okay, maybe first off, buy things that are really important to you, and don't try to collect everything under the sun, right? And then number two, right? Um, when you don't have when your place is empty and you feel like you don't own anything, and there's a fear of like, do I even own this stuff? You know,
Yeah.
do I own this stuff? What if they take it away? Because they could.
Yeah.
You don't really own it.
And me personally, I think that creates market opportunities. All independent artists need to be marketers, need to be salespeople.
Mhm.
I bet you if some guy in that class made her a mixtape, she'd totally go
Mhm.
out with him.
I think so.
See?
Yeah, I agree. Blast Beat 100%. America needs to fall in love with reading it. So everyone's making phenomenal comments. I'm trying to
Hmm.
read them and respond to Yang at the same time. So it's wonderful conversations that we're having. It's great. It's all relevant and it's all real. And we it's funny throughout the history, particularly with art history, the first thing the artist was doing, I'm talking caveman, this desire to put a handprint on the wall. If you look at those
Hmm.
paintings, if you guys really want to see something that is almost chilling but beautiful, look up the caveman handprints. It is so powerful because these are people who were us, and these are like 30,000 years ago, and they wanted to make their handprint. And that's something. Why? Why is it they wanted to do that? Since the dawn of man, we wanted to draw and make art. This is before any civilization, right?
Yep.
Think about that. We wanted to make art before organized laws, right? Even a concept of religion. Yet we made art first, which is so fascinating. The idea to create something. So we have that. And then slowly the artist is just a craftsman, right? Is this craftsman in the medieval period and then Rome too, but
Hmm.
still highly regarded, but not as much in the medieval period. And then we have artist as genius, right? We have artist as genius with Michelangelo, right? Now the artist is this genius. First time ever the word artist and genius was used together in the same term. It was to talk about Michelangelo. First time ever the word genius was used. Then after that, right now the artist is the struggling artist, right? It's the person who suffers for his art with Van Gogh. And then you have artist as outlaw, the artist as outlaw under World War II. And I'm skipping generations
Hmm.
here, obviously, but then the artist was an outlaw. You had to silence the voice of the artist, right? That only art that
Yep.
he didn't find offensive, because that's what it was. He was going through periods of art that he didn't think was suitable for his Reich, and he would have that art destroyed. So you have that. Now, what is going to be the role of the artist after that now? That's the thing. So now we're a mix of everything right now. Now we're a mix of all of those things. But the artist is going to have to take some kind of role now in this AI period that's going to take place. Because we're not
Yeah.
in the AI period yet. It's just the beginning right now. What is the artist's role? What is the artist's role? Is it rebel? You know, I don't know. I don't know. Rebel in the sense by just telling pure stories. I don't know the answer
Uh,
yet.
I think, in my opinion, that's sort of where we're heading back to. We're heading back to the original. We had those
Yes.
guys painting on cave walls, putting their handprint, trying to uh, sort of immortalize themselves with that. They're putting drawings of bison and lions and all this kind of stuff, and then at the same time you have people sitting around a campfire telling stories
Telling
and
stories.
passing along this information orally. I think
Yes.
comics, that's where it's heading, is because, like we briefly touched on, where we're sort of in a postmodern world where everything has been deconstructed. So there's no, if you go to the Middle
Where do you
Ages,
go?
clearly Christianity, you have like a very clear hierarchy of what you should be doing, the stories that are
Right.
important. Now we have nothing. So I think it's going to be back to people
Back to
trying
fundamentals.
to make not necessarily moral tales, but making characters that are heroic, that are living,
Uh,
are an exemplar of how you could live your life.
that's my and that was my point back to Homer, right? Those guys,
Yep.
those type of storytellers, those fearless storytellers. That's a great, circle back. It's going. That's exactly what I was saying with going back to those type of stories, and that's what I'm trying to emulate. Those are my idols
Hmm.
right now. And Blood Realm, while it didn't start out that way, it has certainly taken that route now because, in my opinion, studying history, I see this bigger picture now of what's taking place in our world, and we need these types of stories. And it's my responsibility as the artist, as a creator, to make stories that echo that in some way, and then I digest it. I don't want to say and vomit it out, and release it
Hmm.
into the world. You know, but that can we associate in our time that feels like it's for our time, but still at the same time encapsulating the ideas of these fearless creators from the past.
Uh, so you said you've got new Blood Realm material coming out soon. When can we expect more Blood Realm?
That's out. That's out. So Blood Realm issue 13 is out. Pete is shipping it to all of the backers for the winter from the winter campaign. You can order it right now. This is the first episode in this brand new mini series that's taking place. You could start with this, or you could go and get the whole collection if you missed out. I mean, come on. They're only about a buck 50 to $2 an issue. So,
That's about you can get two Blood Realm books for the cost of a Starbucks.
right, exactly. White Alex, Rob Baby Birds it into the world.
So and so people could get the issue now in time for
Yes,
Christmas.
yes.
When do you expect to have the next issue out?
Well, I'm gonna be launching a campaign um, in April, so that's the target for the next many issues? 5 issues.
Oh,
Five
okay,
issues.
nice.
It's gonna be a big batch. I'm just unbelievable artwork that I'm sitting on right now, and I'm coloring slowly. So I can't wait. I can't wait, guys. It's. I feel like if you guys are understanding what I've been talking about this whole interview, you guys are going to get this story. It's a lot of research and love went into this, and it's a story I need to tell. And I personally, I'm not trying to sound like I'm some kind of prophet. I feel like it's a story that the world needs right now. You know what I'm saying?
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right, so Rob, any last words or advice before we sign off?
Oh, sure. So yeah, follow me on Geronimo Draws at Geronimo Draws on Twitter, Instagram. Uh, Subscribe to my YouTube channel. We have great conversations as I do draw streams, and I'll have some creators come on and talk about their process, and we could talk about their books and their characters and how we go about making fantasy worlds. And that's Geronimo Draws. And if you're interested in Blood Realm, go to alternacomics.com.
And we've got links in the description for both the YouTube channel and where to
Oh,
buy Blood Realm on Alterna.
thank you.
Uh, so, Rob, thanks for coming. It's been a lot of fun. Hopefully, we'll get you back soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. And thank you, everybody. All these awesome, awesome guys, man. Thank you so much.
Uh, oh, thanks, Blaster Beat.
Uh,
So, for anyone who's interested, uh, I normally on Friday evenings will be on the Dungeon Delvers channel playing classic Gamma World, where I play Rex Dashington, human in a mech suit. I think this week
ooh.
for the holidays we're taking off, but next Friday, check that out. And yes, I actually will have more information coming up soon on Empires of the Undying Sun, which is
Ooh.
a D&D 5e campaign guide, which hopefully will be launching by the middle of next year. Well, hopefully, hopefully.
Sounds good.
So thanks everyone for coming, and hopefully see you soon. Oh, the guy behind me.
I think he means that's the man I killed yesterday.
That is Xiaogu,
Oh.
my lovely assistant, who made his appearance for Halloween and for some reason has decided to stick around.
Mm. Mm. Did he not? Was he not a good servant? Or assistant? You
Um,
said.
you know, standards were not met, punishments were given.
I
What can I say?
understand. I understand.
I'm a
I
harsh,
understand.
I'm a harsh boss.
I know.
All right, everyone. Good night.
Take care.